So now let's talk about fiscal policy and private savings. So there is a thing called the Ricardian equivalence, the theory that rational private households might shift their saving in order to offset government saving or borrowing. So basically, now that you understand what could happen next, you could anticipate what's going to happen next. So as soon as something happens in the news, you're like, okay, all right, so they announced government spending going to happen. Okay, what's going to happen next? They might need to do more borrowing. Okay, now what do I do? Do I want to save more money? Do I want to buy the bond? Right? Like the Ricardian equivalence is basically where households are going to change their consumption patterns because of a change in government spending. If this is true, then any change in government budgets or deficits, budget deficits or budget surpluses, would be completely offset by a corresponding change in private savings. So changes in government spending would have no effect at all on either physical capital investment or trade balances. So in reality, the private sector only sometimes or partially adjusts its private savings behavior to offset the budget deficits and surpluses. Like, we can kind of see it here. We can definitely see it right here where, we increase the savings because of a budget deficit. And we increase the savings here because of a budget deficit. So, it does happen. We do see this Ricardian equivalence, but only sometimes, only partial adjustments. We're talking, like 5% of the GDP extra here. So basically, any change in the budget deficit does change the private savings. Okay. So, what does that mean for investment, though? Government borrowing can reduce the financial capital available for private firms to invest in physical capital, crowding out. Remember, that's what we talked about. Higher you do the budget deficit, you have to borrow because of that. That increases the demand for financial capital. So this increases the interest rate. Interest rates higher, less investment, crowds out the increase in government spending. Okay. However, government spending can also encourage certain elements of long-term growth, such as the spending on roads or water systems. Okay, basically where, we do have to maybe improve the infrastructure of our city or our state. We need better roads, we need better highway systems, we need better buildings, we need more efficient water delivery systems. Okay, because if we invest into that today, that's going to make us a lot more efficient later. We could have investments into education. So governments are going to increase spending, such as in the Great Society, we had increases in education, such as Head Start programs. So basically, government spending is saying like, hey, we're going to put this here in education so you can have a better education now, and that's going to increase our GDP later. Right? So yes, government spending could have the crowding out effect. However, we also have to look at, we could have a decrease in investment today, but this could increase the investment in something else, such as research and development into new technology. All right, so basically, firms might not invest in themselves to do research and development, but governments are like, hey, we'll give you the money. They'll spend the money in order to do research and development. So, that's a little give and play there. Okay? And we can kind of see this going on here where, we have, let's say, a budget deficit, and this changes the amount of investment going on, such as right here. All right, we had a big budget deficit here, less spending. Okay, we had a bigger budget deficit here, and investments going down. So we kind of see it here. Just didn't really happen back in 2020. Back in 2020, what was a big deal was just the consumption decreased a ton because nobody was going out anymore. They weren't buying anything. So we had a big dramatic decrease in the consumption. Investment kind of stayed about the same. Please note that a survey of economic studies on the connection between government borrowing and interest rates in the U.S. economy suggested that an increase of 1% in the budget deficit will lead to a rise in the interest rates of 0.5 to 1%. So, they actually looked at the data and they did see how budget deficit led to higher interest rates. Okay. So, if we were to look at fiscal policy as an investment, the types of public physical capital that we can look at, such as roads and water systems, transportation, right? So, we could invest in more buses, because if people don't have to have a car, but they can have a bus, they can get to work, we can be more efficient, we can have more people getting to the same location, more efficiently than having 50 cars going to the same location. We could have better community and regional development, so that could be better parks. This could be, people getting together to have a better downtown system, maybe more businesses downtown that are efficiently run, bring more people into your city. We could have natural resources and environmental issues resolved. Basically, if we have a lot of pollution going on in the city or a state, we could invest in how do we decrease the amount of pollution. Do we need to put in taxes? Do we need to increase the investment into technology in order to decrease the pollution there? We could have investments into education, training, employment, social services, right? Education's a huge one. We need to invest in education like crazy, because if we can help you, if we can give you like a good baseline education, you can learn at least that, and then based off of that, you can keep going. But the main thing is setting that good foundational education, and then going from there. And if we have a lot of rocky roads in the sense of like some students get it, some don't. The people that don't understand it but still pass high school, that's where it's like, well, we need to figure out how can we get more people at least understanding this to where we can go from there. We need more critical thinkers out there. And by having more investment into education and figuring out how can we make more critical thinkers, how can we make more people solve the issues that are happening in society to get us to the efficient point. All right, how can we do that? So investments in education are huge. It is hard to quantify how much government investment into physical capital will benefit the economy, because government responds to political, environmental incentives. So basically what's happening here is that the government's going to invest $50 billion into education, but we don't really know where does that benefit lead to. What is the benefit of a critical thinker? We don't know, right? Just those economic and political incentives too. On top of that, it really makes it hard to quantify just the benefits of these investments. Do we know they benefit? Yeah. But in terms of marginal benefits, marginal costs, basically, if we were to put $50 billion into it, are we going to at least get 50 billion benefit out of it? And so that's where it gets hard to quantify at least that. Changes in private savings. If the government decides to finance an investment in public physical capital with higher taxes or lower government savings in other areas, it may not directly crowding out private investment. Indirectly, however, higher household taxes could cut down on the level of private savings available. So this is just what we talked about, how basically you don't want to save at the bank. You would rather buy the bond and earn interest that way. Okay? So that's what would happen, where we would cut down taxes and then the level of private savings available. Investment in human capital. In most countries, the government does play a large role in society's investment in human capital through the education system. Again, that's just a great way to have economic growth, is just having more people educated. A highly educated and skillful workforce contributes to a higher rate of economic growth, such as the Head Start program, okay, where we were looking at early childhood education. Starting at the early childhood, that's going to be another foundation layer. Okay, can we make another one? Can we make another one? But it starts here. And it was directed at families with limited educational and financial resources. Governments do offer a lot of programs in terms of just education, trying to increase that, such as university and colleges. So, things like scholarship programs in order to increase those. However, in the U.S. in recent decades, increased financial resources at the K through 12 level have not brought greater measurable gains in student performance. So, the idea is great, right? Okay, put more education in, and we're going to get more performance. Okay, but what's happening here is that some education experts question whether the problems may be due to the structure, not just the resources spent. Like, you're putting money into it, but we're not getting the results that we want. We want to see this increase in the performance of the students. We want to see this increase in test scores. We want to see this increase in measurement of critical thinking, but, the resources or the spending that's being done on education, it's not going towards this increase in performance. It might think it is, but obviously it's not, because the performance is not increasing. Basically, it's like you would like for more spending, okay, more marginal cost, to be equal to the marginal benefit. But what's happening here is the marginal cost is more than the marginal benefit, because we're not having those increase in the performance. So we have to figure out, okay, well, what's the issue? Like, what is the government missing? Right, we're having the money for it, but where should it go? Should it be to higher salaries for teachers? Should it be into more technology in the classroom? Should it be better lunches, right? Should it be some sort of outside program, right? So basically, some students are doing well in school, but when they get out of school, that's where it's like they don't have time to actually study for the exam. And if they can't study for the exam, they don't pass it, right? And it was all because they had to focus on outside things. So maybe we should focus on that. There are many different ideas on how we can increase student performance. Last thing is the investment in technology, such as technology in the classroom, right? Research and development efforts are the lifeblood of new technology. It's all about basically that investment, right? Basically taking spending, and you're trying to, look at it in the sense of like, okay, I have money, I'll research this, figure out if it's good or not, and then I'll make this new technology, and that's going to change the world. Okay, about 1/5 of U.S. research and development spending goes to defense and space-oriented research. So that's pretty interesting, right? So we spend a lot of money on defense and space research. Defense-oriented research and development spending sometimes produces consumer-oriented spin-offs, but is less likely to benefit the civilian economy than direct civilian R&D spending. So, the government does see some benefit in the sense of this defense spending, because basically, if we invented something, it's like, okay, well, we could also make that in the private market. We don't have to make this for like defense spending for the government. We could also make it for the public. And so, there's some benefit there. Not as much as like the government actually spending money for something society, like everybody's going to use, but it does have some benefit there. Fiscal policy can encourage research and development using either direct spending or tax policy. Spending more on research and development laboratories, like that could work out. Expanding the grants to universities. So basically what a grant is basically it's just where you have this idea on a new technology. And so you come to the government and you give them a sales pitch. You're like, hey, this is going to be this. This is how I'm going to show you this improves society. This is how much it costs, right? And so I need this money in order to produce this product. And so the government will give you a grant that says, yep, go ahead and make this happen. And so they give these for universities, colleges, nonprofit organizations, private sector, right? So they do these for all of them in order to basically get this drive or give this benefit to the developer or the inventor, saying like, hey, you need to come up with ideas, because if you do, you get this extra money from me, this grant. And then there's also tax incentives, which allow firms to reduce their tax bill as they increase spending on R&D. So a big one is investment tax credits. So basically, investment tax credits are where the government's like, hey, I'll give you less taxes, but the only way I'll give you less taxes is if you do more investment. So by you doing investment, you decrease taxes. So basically, it's like you're thinking like, well, I was going to do investment anyways, so I get my taxes go down. Cool deal. So I'll invest more. So that's kind of the drive there in order to increase investment, increase aggregate demand, increase the potential GDP through technology, increase economic growth. They're all connected here. Okay? So that's the end of chapter 18. All right. I'll see you in the next videos. Bye.